having certified special ed teachers, which, by the way, is very, very difficult. It used to be that you could find special ed teachers. Now we have to pay a stipend to find special ed. And I found 3 special ed bilingual teachers in Puerto Rico. So I'm like, oh boy, I'm drooling over them, right? 2 first.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I was definitely here in spirit as far as family and friends. Had one of my sons had power and water, the other one didn't. So he had, the one that did had to do a bunch of hosting with a bunch of people, and so lots to think about as far as to-dos for the future from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint. Because again, Legacy lucked out. We didn't have any power or water bursts that we know of yet, and we've only had school now in there for we went virtual Monday because so many people still didn't have power, or it was intermittent, including staff, by the way. That's why we did that. But we were back in the building yesterday and today. So as we use the building and flush toilets and so forth, we'll know if we had any damage. But I'll tell you, there are a lot of schools with old pipes, because we never have enough money to do pro maintenance. We only have money to fix maintenance, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, we live, public education lives in the world of having to fix, not having to plan ahead. It's just unfortunate. It is the way it is. We won't lament that here, but very many schools have found that their old pipes did not do them well during this past week.
Well, they even had some new pipes that didn't go well, or some new schools. And I'm trying to think of which district it was, because I was having this conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and he's like, this is like a spring break 1.0. Oh, the McKinney area, a newer school, and the pipes had burst. I just, Dr. Good, I think that it was just so stinking cold, and that we were not built for that kind of cold. Yeah. My sister, they're living, their last 2 weeks up in Abrams, Wisconsin has been negative 21 degrees. My niece has not yet not gone to school. Their internet connection's been fine. No pipes burst, electricity the whole time.
Well, their infrastructure is done differently. Their insulation is different.
Right.
Everything is different because they prepare for that. We were not prepared for that. Shame on us. And I'm going to tell you something. 6 years ago, I remember we had 4. Do you remember when we had all those snow days? And I know Legacy had 4 snow days, which was unheard of. Back then it was 29 or 30 years of schooling. I'd never had more than 1 or 2 a year. To have 4 off, and now we've had a whole week plus. Some districts had to do extra this week, and so now TEA is having to scramble, and all of us are scrambling to get a board meeting. I have a board meeting tomorrow to approve certain waivers that TEA had to put together for special procurement. A lot of people don't know that we're under very strict procurement rules and laws. You have to have 3 bids. You have to, they have to be approved. They have to be vetted. And so some of those rules can be put to the wayside in emergency situations, but they have to be approved by the board with the correct legalese language. And so we're doing that. We're doing approving the fact that we could pay staff during their time off last week. And then another one is we are putting in for a waiver. The board is approving a waiver, which we will then have to go in and submit after we get the minutes from the meeting to show the rationale to PE. Well, it's not, we have to archive, all districts have to archive the reason why we didn't have school for that length of time. And so this is the process that we do it with. We go to board, we approve the waiver and the rationale for not being in school all last week. And then we have to submit that to the state so that they can have it available should 3 years down the road, somebody say, well, how come, X district was closed for a week? Well, let's go into the records and figure it out. So a lot of people think school is sloppy, but I'll tell you that there's a lot of dotting I's and crossing T's
Right.
that have to be done when it comes to
getting school function. I mean,
yes. Yeah.
just to move forward. I mean, people. I don't think people realize how difficult it can be to just get a toilet changed out sometimes in a school
Oh,
building.
oh,
You know, I mean, it's not as easy. You just can't walk in and do it. It's not like private industry where you can walk
no,
in.
sir.
I want that toilet changed. Change the toilet out. Let's go.
You know, a lot of our felons that come out from prison go into some of jobs like being electricians, plumbers, sheetrockers, and all of that. And if they can't pass the background check, they can't come in our school unless school is closed. And so, if we have a bunch of toilets that are out or pipes that are burst, we have to be closed if we want to allow people who can't pass a background check but have skills in other very important areas into the school. So it starts there, just being
Right.
able to allow people in the building.
Well, and Michelle, part of the crew, has said that Caddo was okay, but asked all the students to bring bottled water with them.
Mm.
Because that was another thing. The water supply, due to the lack of electricity, to function the pump stations, which function the filtering of all of our water, the cleaning of our water. Because, what's funny is a lot of people don't realize that our water comes from our lakes.
Right.
And so they don't realize that. And so if you just drink that water straight, then you're drinking some nasty stuff. And, to get this boil requirement, I think was shocking to people. To me, it was like, I'm in the zombie apocalypse, for goodness sakes.
Well, you're right, because when I read that first of all, you have to remember that some smaller districts went to full face-to-face. They couldn't manage both the face-to-face and virtual, if you'll remember.
Right.
Some of our smaller school districts and rural school districts, they are totally face-to-face. And so because they didn't have the option of virtual, they had to get those kids back in the building, even though they're under a boil water order. And so think about that. That, to me, that was, but then I had to get past that and say, wait a minute, if the kids bring their water and the school has water that they can give to those that don't have it, and we don't turn the water faucets on, we can do this. We can flush toilets, right?
Right.
Can use sanitizer to wash our hands. So it's doable. But that first instinct was, what?
Right. Well, and also, if you didn't have water. So, for example, us and Anna, we didn't have water. So the toilets were an interesting perspective. So I'm out buying gallons of water. And then what's funny is I'm bringing in huge bowls of snow and putting them in the tanks so that we can continue to flush water, to flush the toilets, I mean.
Yeah, when my husband picked me up from the airport at 4 on Saturday, we went straight up to the lake house because we hadn't been there during that week to make sure those pipes hadn't burst. And we had a trickle of water and not enough to do the toilets and no snow left. So we had to use, lake water. And again, I kept getting that feeling. I had watched Love and Monsters on the plane coming back. And, I don't know if you've watched that movie, but it's what happens when the world goes topsy turvy and you're having to do without electricity and so forth. And that's sort of where we are, right? We have to sort of go back to the past so that we can move forward in the future. And so what are our learnings from this, right? This is,
Right.
this is my always my take is, what can we learn from this so that it's not so severe next time? Because it's going to happen again. It is.
Oh gosh, yes, and because the weather is topsy turvy in Texas, anyways. You
Yes.
put out a really cool thing, a meme or whatever they call it on Facebook.
Yeah.
We have with the Texas, Texas there, and it said something along the lines of, "Who can go from 0 degrees to 70 degrees in a week? Hey, hold my ...
My beer.
hold my beer ... It's like
This can.
yeah, Texas can. So give us a hard time about our infrastructure struggling, but we're 70 degrees 7 days later. How about
We
that?
were 80 yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 69 degrees last night at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy. And it's a wonder people don't, can't keep up. I'm sure there's a mental health piece here that we need to talk about probably, and that is just the sheer amount of things that have, can we say go wrong? Or what's another phrase that
Right.
have kept us off kilter and kept us from being able to develop a normal routine in our life. And so there are people who will, if the pandemic didn't do it, last week is going to really push them over the edge. And so we've alerted our staff to be on alert about that, because we have families and kids who are just, I mean, they were struggling before. Goodness gracious, what would have last week done to these
Oh, absolutely.
struggling people?
Well, it's funny. It's, a lot of people are coining the phrase, and Dr. Nix, my partner, he's coined it as well. Snowvid of COVID to 2021, and it's just like, you thought 2020 was bad. Woo, buddy, welcome to here. The here and
So
now.
what was that meme? There was a meme about 2020 was hell, and 2021 where something go to hell or something. And
Right.
2021 was supposed to be our salvation year.
Yeah. So much for that.
Well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, though.
Well, I
And
was about to say it may have been a salvation.
if you look at it that way, if you can get your mental health to the point where you think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you get into that learning mode, and you think, and you get yourself the help. By the way, that is an eternal cry that you've heard me say. Please, please, please allow yourself to take advantage of your social emotional resources that most people have. Everybody who's working has EAPs, right? Employee assistant programs. Some of them give you 3 free ones. Some of them give you 6 or 8, depending on how big the company is. Take advantage of that, folks. Goodness gracious. Plus, there's just free stuff. They're just go to your Region 10 Service Center and go to the social emotional site on the Region 10, and there's free resources for parents, for students, and for staff.
Yep. Oh, I agree. Couldn't agree more. It's interesting, and this is a true statement as well. Michelle said she thought people probably were more put out with the fact that their phones and their computers weren't working, and they couldn't get on the internet because things were down. I know that my phone struggled. We lost Wi-Fi for several days at the house. I called AT&T, and they said, "Yeah, we're down, and we're trying to get back up. We'll send you a text when we're back up and running." Of course, I have yet to get that text, but nonetheless, I mean, we even struggled with being able to get Wi-Fi. And so then again, that's one of those things also where you think, okay, guess what? No more snow days. Go home. We're going to go remote. But Dr. Good, even Legacy was hit with a technology issue.
Oh yeah. No, there was no chance at anybody last week really being able to say we're going to hold virtual school, because people across the Metroplex had intermittent power. And so, that's why we're going to board tomorrow, to excuse those days and to be able to pay people for those days.
Yeah, I mean, I look back and I think how interesting because I sat there when it first hit, and I'm like, yeah, kids don't get as lucky as we did when we were in school, and we had ice days or snow days. They actually have to go to school remotely. Well, then when the internet went down, I'm like, well, I'll be darned. I mean, there's even a way to stop remote learning, for goodness sakes. And so, yeah, I just thought it was very, very interesting. And, I guess the big question is, will public schools shift their readiness to be ready for something like this that could hit? Because it hit from the Panhandle all the way south of Houston. I mean, it hit pretty hard in Texas.
Yeah, I was sort of interested to know how it was that Biden picked Houston to go visit as a disaster area, because I would have thought Metroplex would have been hit harder because we were more north. But maybe because their infrastructure was not anywhere near ready for that, versus ours that was halfway ready or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and I'm curious too.
Do you think that was odd of all the places to pick?
I thought maybe it was because of the young boy that lost his life. He was out playing in the snow, day 1, day 2, he doesn't wake up. He was a perfectly healthy boy. And then, again, they were in a mobile home that was 40 years old with no insulation, and he passes away. And so I think that maybe that was a cause. Okay. I think that, I think Houston may have suffered a little more in the death count, which is terrible, as a result of the storm as well. So I'm thinking that may be a possibility.
Okay.
Who knows? Who knows what the thought process is? I'm sure, sadly, I'm sure it had some political gain involved in it.
Uh,
Maybe they're,
no, shock face.
yeah, I mean, maybe they're, more Democrats down there, or maybe there's more of a chance for him to build a base in Houston. Who knows? I do think it's interesting that, at least to this point, politics hasn't come into play in declaring Texas a state of emergency to help provide FEMA funding to help families out. Oklahoma was first, of course. Oklahoma hit negative 14 degrees, and they suffered tremendously up in Oklahoma as well. And so I was surprised to see that he opened up the door and immediately, without hesitation, granted the declaration of emergency status to provide aid. I don't want to get away too much from schools because I want to come back. There was also something released that standardized testing will be done this year.
Yes. No question. Yeah. So, and we've been knee deep in that issue because we have a virtual academy. And so what we've learned is that for our virtual kids, if they live within 60 miles of one of our campuses, they must come in and test. And so we have kids in Lubbock and Corpus Christi, and so certainly further away than 60 miles. And so we will be going to them. Matter of fact, I volunteered to be the certified officer that goes to Lubbock because my brother lives there, and to test those kids out there. And so, if we keep the perspective of the assessment as now we get to know the impact this year and last year has had on kids, and it's not going to ding the school or the district or the teacher, then that's the right reason to test, right?
Right.
If we keep that focus, and this year we get to keep that focus again, and that is, we need that information on the impact we're having on kids, because frankly, we were worried about last year. Now we need to add this year to the worry. That's 2 years of irregular instruction, and that's worrisome.
I mean, and easily we're behind a year out of those 2 years, potentially 2 years. It's remote learning and remote teaching is not our culture. That's not what we do. And I know that in my experiences in the tribunals, I know kids are struggling. Seniors that are saying, I cannot sit in my house anymore and stare at a screen for 6 hours.
Well, yeah, and I know that our seniors, because they come from economic areas where they're just used to working. And if they have parents who, if you're going to have a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid home for virtual learning, they need to also be working. And so
Right.
That's our battle right now, is to get enough attention on the part of our working high schoolers to have them finish school. So it's really hard to get the attention of long-term planning for our high schoolers right now and get them focused on the future when, they're just trying to struggle in the present.
Well, and, Michelle asked the question, is virtual learning hurting our kids?
Here's what I'm going to say. We have had some strong success with virtual learning, but that's a partnership between the parents and the teachers. And if you have that, you have kids who are being successful. If you don't have that, if you have parents who don't value virtual learning and don't then understand the need to add their experiences and their effort to the virtual learning, then it will not be as successful. What I mean by that is, if you have parents who are doing virtual learning by choice, and they also understand that they have to add their help to that virtual learning, then the assessments are showing those kids are almost as successful as our face-to-face. And what I mean by that is that parents are talking to their kids about what they're learning. Parents are adding experiences about that instruction to the learning. They're going on field trips about that learning, or they're just adding anecdotal data to that learning. And that's when virtual learning succeeds. But it's an effort. We have many parents who said, I didn't plan on being a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher, and I'm not going to do it. And so those kids are not going to be as successful as kids who have parents who are sort of all in saying, hey, yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to work with my kid. He's safer here at home, but I understand that I need to help out. I'm going to add some experiences to this topic. I'm going to add some science projects that have to do with that science learning that they're doing. That makes the experience better.
Well, and I guess one of the things that I'm hearing from students, and again, with me, it's you hear one or two people, it's like, well, okay, but when you hear 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people saying the same thing, not related to each other, not even in the same district, then I go with that whole where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And one of the things that I'm hearing is that a lot of the students are saying, we don't feel like we're learning anything. We're doing a lot of what appears to be reviewing, not even just reviewing, but re-reviewing material, and I don't feel like I'm going forward. And so I'm hearing a lot of that from a lot of students. Again, if it's one or two, then I discount it as, well, you're not giving enough to get enough. But when I'm hearing it from 10, 12, 13, 14 kids or more, I start to wonder, is that what we're stuck with because of our environment of remote learning?
No, and this is when a parent needs to be more involved and reach out to the teacher or the school principal to say, hey, woo, because teachers are struggling also, right? You have a bell curve of successful teachers, right? Successful teachers fall on a bell curve, just like any other profession. And so you have those that are really good. I mean, the master teacher, I have Carla Smith that comes on my show every once in a while. She wrote the book on making kids from poverty successful, but not everybody wants to undergo that type of effort. And she's had to put up with a lot of bullying from other teachers who want her to tone it down because it makes them look bad.
Oh,
right?
Sure. Oh, sure.
And so you have that going on. And so if you happen to have a teacher like Carla, stand back and let them do their work. But if you don't, then you need to let that director know. I'll give you an example. My granddaughter came back with a report card yesterday in a brand new school. They moved states, Georgia to Kentucky. This is her first report card. She gets an A in everything except math was an 89. To me, anything with a 9 is a failure on the teacher's part. So my granddaughter, who's in 5th grade, went to the teacher and said, I think this should have been in the 90s. And the teacher had an opportunity with this brand new student from a new state who came to her to say, why do you think that? But instead, she said, the teacher told her, it is what it is.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, and I told my daughter, I said, you need to go talk to that teacher. And if you don't get some respect, that she's going to respect your daughter who wanted to enter into a discussion about this 89 because she's had me as a grandmother. Okay. We don't do
Right.
60, 69s at Legacy. We don't fail kids without showing extreme effort to help that kid not fail. And if you allowed a kid to get an 89, a 69, any of those, that's a teacher issue. I'm sorry. And so, but then when the teacher said it is what it is, oh, you just, So I am coaching my daughter because this is a pretty good show.
Right.
And so
You're a pub ed advocate.
Yeah. And so we need to help that teacher know that you don't you don't brush off a 5th grader who wants to enter in a discussion about her grades. Right. This is an ample opportunity to build that relationship and trust, but instead the teacher blew it. And so let's see if he can recover.
Yeah, because engaging teachers are the best teachers. And it doesn't mean you're always going to get the answer that you want, but sitting down and engaging with that student, looking at it, analyzing it, talking about it, if it is what it is, well, sit down and talk about that. And don't just say it is what it is. And next time we need to do this a little bit differently. And, maybe I missed something this time. Come to me earlier if your grade's on the brink like that.
Yes.
And let's see if we can.
Kid, brand new to the state as of 3 or 4 weeks ago. And this is how you're treating her? No.
Yeah. So, no taco bueno. as I
No
like
taco
to
Bell.
say. No taco bueno. So, Dr.
So,
Good, we've got your podcast coming up on Sunday where you will be there talking to people and ready to answer questions. What are we talking about this week?
well, we have our last in our series of the Black History series with Clarence Glover, Professor Freedom. And, we've been talking the last 3 weeks about, really the African American timeline in the United States. And I know I've learned a lot from him. I could talk to him all day like I could talk to you. I thought, especially interesting were the public education schools for African Americans back 100 plus years ago. But we're finishing the series with all that has led to the unrest that we've had now. And so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for African Americans, for white Americans, for Black Americans, for Latino Americans? What does that mean for us? Where are we going to go with all of this? How can we keep the movement going so that we don't ebb and flow? We keep ebb and flowing, don't we? And then
Yes.
something triggers it, and we need to stop triggering, and we need to keep that flow going so that we all can really have a more equitable relationship with each other.
I agree. And this series has been fantastic. First of all, I love the professor. I mean, he's way good and enjoy listening to him. He's got a very dynamic personality. So I do encourage all of you to tune in. And if you didn't catch the live broadcasts on Sunday, then go to YouTube. Go to our YouTube page at JPK Broadcasting Network, not the JPK, but JPK Broadcasting Network, and go back and watch because we've got them podcasted there where you can go catch them all and watch the series. I think there's a lot to learn from what he has to say.
Well, I think that it's time for white Americans to open themselves up to being uncomfortable. That's what we talked about last week, and certainly will be this week. And understand that there's some things that we have to admit. We have to admit that we maybe did benefit from being the dominant society, that maybe things were a little bit easier for us to manage and to be successful at because we were in the majority race at the time. Things are shifting, and much like our shifting environment and weather and so forth, things are shifting as far as race. And so the best way to handle that is just to treat everybody equitably and well.
Dr. Good, one of the things that I would be curious, have the numbers increased on the in the population count, or are we just becoming more, as the younger group would say, are we just becoming more woke about it and taking care of it?
I think we have a combination of that. Certainly, that the Latino population has become our dominant population, and then so we don't have a white majority in many cities anymore, and yet we still have leadership that is predominantly white in many companies, in many schools, and that is troubling, right? Because that means that the funnel is not equitable. If we have majority Latino or majority minority, and yet leadership is predominantly white, then something happened along the way that wasn't equitable.
Well, it's just going to be interesting. I'm curious to see population numbers because we should be getting some results, I would think, from the census. Yeah. And so I am really curious to see where everybody's moved and if there's been any shift in urban living. So, yeah, I'm going to be real curious to see. So I know someone knocked on my door, and I talked with somebody about the census and answered their census questions. So very interesting.
I have some good results. I wasn't getting a warm feeling about people wanting to give their results in. There were some myths out there about the government sort of wanting to know more about you than you thought that they should have. But it's awfully hard to make infrastructure changes, to make funding decisions when we don't have good numbers for all neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That'll be a whole nother educational topic, and the shift of possible educational dollars. And so, yeah, that'll be a nice, interesting topic to talk about when that comes about. Well, Dr. Good, I know that it is time to get you on your way. In fact, I have kept you a little longer than normal.
That's okay. That's all right.
It's like you said, you and I could talk forever.
Yeah, we could. And things are crazy these days. Just nothing's the same.
Thank you. That's the truth.
Talk later.
All right, hey, don't forget, Sunday, 8 a.m., Dr. Be Good. Thank you, Dr. Be Good. All right, so that is Dr. Be Good with us there. And, interestingly enough, education continues to change over and over and over and over again. And we need to be able to keep up with those changes. And someone like Dr. Good, who does the work for us, makes it a whole lot easier to discuss those changes and understand those changes better. So if you get a chance, tune into her on Sundays at 8 o'clock and share with your friends. It's interesting. I've got educators from all over the country that are tuning in to Dr. Be Good and listening to her show. So do love that. So if you get a chance, tune in and catch her show. All right. So you see that Kathy is not here again today. We continue to ask for your prayers for Kathy and her family. You know, they lost somebody very, very dear to them. Her mother's most significant other, Jerry, passed away and very suddenly. And so our prayers go out to Kathy and her family. I do understand where Kathy's at because I lost my mother 3 years ago and still really haven't recovered from that. So nonetheless, we want to make sure we put together some prayer for Kathy and her family and her mom as they go through this. So how interesting is Capitol Hill right now? I'll tell you, it's pretty darn interesting.
Wearing a face mask has become part of everyday life around the world.
Look at that. That's a commercial we're playing for you, right?
That's why we're excited to introduce the Four Ocean Face.
We're not going to talk about that. We're going to skip that. Don't know where that came from. So Democrats are referencing the Constitution when they look at the fruitless impeachment trials against Donald Trump. And the big question is, did they follow the Constitution when doing the job they were elected to do, which is legislate? And I'm going to argue that they did not. And let's talk about why, right? So how about this? House Resolution 1, Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution states, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. The Constitution clearly outlines and is unambiguous when it comes to road mapping and delineating the government's national framework, including the nation's election system. So H.R. 1, also known as the For the People Act, is the Democrats' latest attempt to disregard the Constitution in this unbelievable power grab. Remember I told you that this really has nothing to do with us, the people. It has to do with who can grab the power and grab the money. That's what this thing is about. And they are in a huge power grab with election reform. And this is the thing, we have got to make sure that we are on top of our game. And I mean, we, the people, and we hold our elected officials accountable for what they're doing. H.R. 1 is so unconstitutional, it would strip the states of their constitutional responsibility as the referees of their elections by subverting local and state rules with the rule of coastal elitist politicians. Yeah, are you hearing me right? I mean, this is craziness. The bill would strip power away from the elected official and the people that were elected to serve in the state capitals from Tallahassee, Florida, to South Dakota, to Concord, New Hampshire, Phoenix, Arizona, Austin, Texas. Here's the thing. Nancy Pelosi, who has famously said, we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it. I read the bill, and it's a disaster. I've looked at H.R. 1, but it's terrible that we've got our Speaker of the House saying, well, you got to read H.R. 1 after we pass it to know what's in it. Well, that's not good. Read the 600-page monstrosity. It does the following. It dissolves voter ID laws. Hello, really? That's going to improve voter fraud? Give me a break. It gives Washington bureaucrats the power to redraw congressional districts and create voter qualifications, such as allowing 16-year-olds to vote, open the door to taxpayer-funded political campaigns, and set up fraud-prone mail-in ballots as a new standard of voting. Is that what you really want? Does that sound like we the people to you? It doesn't sound like we the people to me. How on earth can we allow something like H.R. 1 to slip through Congress, slip through the Senate, and allow the federal government that kind of power? Somebody help me out here with this. Excuse me. So the bottom line is that what are you going to do about it? Are you going to step up? Are we going to start contacting these offices of our elected officials in Congress? And I'm not talking about just the ones that represent our district. We need to start contacting Democrats alike and saying, hey, what are you thinking? They would take over the redrawing of congressional districts. I mean, they can't even pass a good aid bill without sticking us so far in debt that our children's children's children aren't going to be able to even pay back the debt. And we're going to trust them to redraw congressional districts? Are you serious? So then I go back to it and I say, okay, how far off are we in talking about separating back out from the United States and becoming Texas the country? How far off are we? And I just don't know that we're too far off if the federal government is going to take over redrawing congressional districts, getting rid of voter ID laws, and then allowing a mass mail-in ballot system that is reaped with fraud and the ability to steal elections. Do we really want that in our state? Well, I'm going to argue that I do not want that in my state. And we need to do something about it. And again, it's not just, hey, let's talk about succeeding. Let's talk about the idea that we don't like it and we're unhappy about it and let's complain. How about let's talk about the fact that it is time for us to make phone calls and tell these people, if you don't stop with the power grab and trying to turn this country into a centralized form of government, then we will absolutely take over this country. Now, am I saying let's be seditious and insurrect? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going to the polls and stopping that. All right, looks like we have got Senator Angela Paxton joining us. We will come back and talk about that in just a moment. Let me admit Senator Paxton into our meeting. Good morning, Senator. She may be connecting audio still. There she is. Good morning,
Howdy,
Senator.
howdy.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing good, John. How are you?
Man, I'm going to tell you, I'm warmer.
No kidding.
I'm warmer.
Let me tell you what's really crazy. Like, it's 66 degrees here in Austin.
Yeah.
It was 79 yesterday.
Dr. Good posted a meme with the state of Texas, and it said, who can go from 0 degrees to 70 degrees in 7 days? Hold my beer, ... Only in Texas.
Serious.
Yep. A lot going on down in Austin. I'll tell you, and Senator, one of my big first questions is about ERCOT. There's a lot of news going on about ERCOT. Tons of people. I mean, it is being talked about by almost every citizen from Amarillo to South Padre Island. The 5 members of the board of ERCOT that were not even in Texas or from Texas. And how does that happen? And what are we doing to rectify that? Of course, you inherited this ERCOT board as a senator because they were already seated. So how does that all come about? How does ERCOT become a board? Or who appoints those players?
Well, I'm still learning kind of about the history of all of this, John, like all of Texas, right? Everybody's getting a great history lesson in Texas energy right now.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think something that many Texans may not know is that Texas has its own grid. Many Texans now do know that, I think, but it's something that we've been very proud of. And we are, it gives us this particular type of independence should anything happen in the rest of the country. And what happened last week is exactly the opposite of, it's the downside of being on our own grid, I guess. And, I'm sure, John, you've heard people talking about, back in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, the legislature addressed a number of things with ERCOT as the result of another bad experience with weather like this. At that time, there was a checklist that was put together. Some of the things that I've been, as I've been kind of gleaning the information, part of what was addressed during that time was, when they had the power outages, they had hospitals going without power. They had water stations going without power. And so one of the things that was done as a result of that was that some of these critical infrastructure, critical safety, health types of facilities, jails, for example, you don't want jail cells popping open.
Right.
All those sorts of things. The transmission lines that they were on were identified and marked as critical. And so one of the things that we did see, generally speaking, in this storm was that's one of the things we were hearing about, the homes that were able to keep power. Many of them were along those transmission lines that had been marked as critical, right? Because there was a hospital on that line or whatever. My home was not on one of those lines. We were actually without power for about 3 days straight with just some interruptions of power, maybe 4 hours total. I was very thankful we had a gas fireplace and a gas grill, so we could cook and everything. But there were many people who were also struggling. They weren't able to get natural gas either. And so clearly there's been a lot of finger pointing. I know, you've seen that as well. To me, the first thing we do is triage this thing.
Right.
And there is definitely some accountability that has to take place. The Public Utility Commission, the PUC, oversees ERCOT and gives it direction. The PUC is appointed by the governor. One of the things that needs a lot of attention is kind of the composition of ERCOT. And I did want to mention to all your listeners, because I know many people are following all of this, like how are we going to fix this? This cannot happen again, ever again. Tomorrow, actually, 9 a.m., the Texas Senate Committee on Business and Commerce will be holding a hearing over ERCOT and all of the things that we dealt with there. So I'm on that committee. I'm thrilled to be able to be right in the heart of the beast on this one.
Sure.
But we are going to be calling invited witnesses to question, to try to get to the bottom of what happened and what needs to be fixed. But if your listeners would like to, or your viewers would like to watch that live stream, texas.senate.gov. I'm sorry, senate.texas.gov. Oh, sorry.
Let me retype. Hold on. Yeah, I'm going to put this in because they would. I mean, we've had a ton of feedback. I mean, it's a ton of feedback.
We have two. Yeah, 9 a.m. tomorrow until we finish. And if it carries over, we'll start again at 9 a.m. on Friday.
And so it's Senate, is it .tx?
Texas.
Senate.texas.
.gov.
Okay.
And just follow there are links for all kinds of things. Actually, some folks might enjoy kind of exploring the website. You can see the composition of various committees, et cetera. But you can also access archived sessions and committee hearings, but you can watch them live stream.
And that's Business and Commerce Committee, right?
Business and Commerce in the Senate.
Gotcha. All right, we got that into the feed.
Okay, great.
One of the other questions, I don't know if you caught the papers or not, yet I know that you are so extremely busy with everything happening down in the Capitol, but somebody has filed a $1 billion lawsuit against ERCOT in regards to price gouging and people seeing these crazy bills and the variable rates that they have in that contract, that if you don't sign up for, your rate to be locked in, where you're paying over 12 months, the average of what your bill would be, people are seeing that. Is the committee going to take that up as well?
Absolutely. And in fact, it's been one of the very, very intense areas of discussion. And as you can imagine, this is something where we've got very, very strong bipartisan support to do something about this. No one is okay with this. In fact, one of the things that's very frustrating, and this is one of the things I want to get to the bottom of, ERCOT had announced that it was going to, I think, drop their rate from $9,000 per megawatt, $9,000 per megawatt to $4,500 per megawatt, and then inexplicably reverse that order to go back to $9,000. Not last night, the night before. The direction for that came from the PUC, and
wow,
that is. First of all, that's not even doable. No one can pay a bill like that.
No.
So like you, I've seen people posting even several days ago, bills from their electric provider over $200,000. That's not okay. It's interesting. As I've been, learning about all of this, part of what I understand is that, the reason that the ERCOT is allowed to kind of raise its rates like that, that the purpose of that was to incentivize providers to increase supply, right?
Right.
Because they could make it, now not at that extravagant sort of a sum, but one of the things that we saw here is it did not increase supply, and so A plus B is not equaling C here. So that is definitely something we're going to look at. No one is okay with this sort of price gouging. And as I think many people have already seen too, the Attorney General's office is launching an investigation into this as well, because it is price gouging to the nth degree.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that the Senate's already holding hearings on this, and I know I'll be tuned in. I encourage everybody in the crew to tune in as well. Want to thank you for jumping into this, because this is definitely going to be a beast. There is no doubt about it. And I know that everybody in Texas that's aware of this, they're going to watch this, because they have such great interest in what's going on the power grid. And because I know this as well, as a Texan, I don't want to be on the eastern or western power grid of the federal government. No, thank you. And I see you shaking your head. No, react to that, Senator Paxton. Holy mackerel, they're trying to get us to jump on the eastern or western power grid.
No, again, one of the great assets we have in Texas is being on our own power grid. We are one of the most energy rich states in the country. There's no reason for this to have happened. So the answer to this is not to get on another power grid. The answer to this is to make sure that we fix what is wrong. So as I said, there's a lot of accountability that is to follow. But the first thing we have to do is identify, where did this break down? Was it just a perfect storm where a lot of bad things happened all at once? Were there some bad actors? Were there some people
Right.
there were some people being negligent? Who knows? But we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to figure out what went wrong, and we are going to address those things. Just like, in 2011, a lot of those things got addressed. We didn't have those problems this time. But every time you go through a challenge, a devastating challenge like this, the upside is it does reveal the weaknesses in the system. And while that is not a pleasant thing to endure or go through, it's a blessing to know it, because then you can address it. And so that's at least my position on this. And if people have not been doing their job, that needs to be addressed in a serious way. And I think it is interesting that we had board members of ERCOT, who resigned just before all of this scrutiny is about to come over. I think that's something. I mean, the composition of that board is one of the things that I have no doubt we will address.
Yeah, I know Texans will demand it, and you'll meet that demand by addressing it and talking about it for sure. We've got a lot of questions, of course, as you would know. I would ask if one of your staff members could go on the feed at some point and maybe answer some of these questions, because there's a lot of them.
Great.
Sure. I don't, and I don't want us to. I know that you've got a busy schedule, and I want to talk about something else. We would also love, and I'm going to reach out to Mr. Ken Paxton and see if we can't get somebody from the AG's office to come on and talk about the price gouging and what can Texas do about it. Because one of the questions we do have is, if a gas station did price gouging, they would be fined. Why not ERCOT? And I think that's probably an attorney general's kind of question. I mean, do you have an answer for that? Do you know the answer to that?
Well, I'll just address it in a general way. I will say this. I mean, that's an example I've used. I've heard other folks use as well. The first thing that I would say to anyone who is seeing anything in addition to this electricity and power issue that we're talking about, but if you ever see something that to you looks like people trying to profit off of other people's suffering in an emergency or disaster situation, then you should contact the Attorney General's office, because they are charged with consumer protection. And as you've mentioned already, John, that is one of the things that the Attorney General does, is go after people who are price gouging. But yeah, I mean, if there's a penalty for price gouging for cases of water, I mean, how much more this? And if you think about this, if we use that gas station analogy, this is, you go to the gas station, and then when you finish filling up, you think you're paying $2.50 a gallon, and you're paying $9,000 a gallon.
Right.
I mean, no one can pay that.
Right.
No one can pay that.
Not even the billionaires can pay $200,000, $300,000 electric bill.
No, I mean, I guess there are some people who can pay that for a couple of days, right? But I mean, that's not right. It's also against the intention, as I understand it, of the original direction and purpose for their ability to adjust on pricing.
Well, I know that it's absolutely ludicrous, and I know we're going to continue to dive into that. I look forward to some of the feedback from your committee hearings when you guys dive into this. So hopefully we can get you back on next Wednesday and see how things got kicked off and where it's going, and maybe what the Senate is thinking on that. I'd like to shift for just a moment and talk about education. Education's a big deal. How are things going on the Education Committee? Are we going to see schools funded okay? Is there a crunch coming? Just in general, what's happening with all of that? And as COVID-19, are we going to be able to put teachers first and get them into that ring where we can get them vaccinated so kids can go back to school?
Well, I think, the first thing, I don't think there have been a lot of changes in direction with education. It has been explicitly stated. I have been very overt about this. And honestly, everyone I've talked to up to this point has been very open about their commitment to make sure that we fund our schools. We can't leave our kids behind. So to be very honest, I haven't had a lot of education discussions in the last week because the attention has been so on power. I know most of our schools were able to go back to school on Monday in person. In Plano, I believe we had 5 campuses that because of water damage, they were not able to. So, this is another thing. I mean, the damage from this storm in business, in homes, in our government properties, in schools is going to be in the billions. And so that is another thing we have to address. But, it's not a great year for us to have another big expense, is it? So, I mean, the Finance Committee is meeting every day. They're meeting right now. I know that we have a commitment to making sure that we fund our schools, and it's going to be tighter than it was before. We do have some federal funding coming in that we're hoping can address some of the damage, for example, on the Plano campuses that had damage from water, et cetera. So, but what I see, and you've probably heard me say this, the secret to great learning is engaged parents and great teachers. And right. It isn't buildings, it isn't, extracurricular activities. It isn't all of the things that a lot of times we think about when we think about a school. The secret of learning is great teachers and engaged parents working together to meet the needs of kids. And education is about kids. And I think as long as we keep that first, we reverse engineer it to make sure that we're doing what we need to do so kids keep learning. So kids don't fall farther behind, so they can become people who are contributing to society, taking care of their own families, and enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Absolutely. And that's, the consulting firm that I began with, Peyton Nixon Associates, that's what we teach. It's reinventing that community in the schools, where it's not your school community is what's inside the building. It's also what's outside of the building. Mm-hmm. Your whole community is your whole community. Every student, every parent, every teacher, every janitor, everybody is a part of that community, and make sure you make that engaged connection. I can't thank you enough for joining us. I know that I've kept you past 8:30, but I could talk to you forever. So,
well, I could too, John, and I just appreciate what you do. If you don't mind, if I might mention two things just very quickly.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I'm excited about today is that we are filing our EMMA bill, Every Mother Matters Act. This bill is something I was able to pass in the Senate last session. It never got a committee hearing in the House. This time, I think we're going to be able to see this to fruition. But what this bill does is it connects women who are in an unexpected pregnancy with resources that they might not know that they're eligible for. We know that almost 3 out of 4 abortion-seeking women say that if their circumstances were different, they would carry the pregnancy to term. So this is a very, very pro-woman, human dignity bill that is designed to go to women who are saying, I don't want to have an abortion, but I don't know what else to do. And we're saying, let us help you connect with some of the things that might help you, whether it's healthcare, childcare, job placement, housing, et cetera, things that you might not know that you have access to. So that's one thing I'm very excited about, the Every Mother Matters Act, EMMA, we're filing today. The second thing I just wanted to highlight, and I'll have someone send these over to you, but the Lieutenant Governor released his our top 31 bills in the Senate, which are the 31 top priorities. I was thrilled to have 2 of the bills on that list this time. One that is a pro-life bill, and the other one a religious freedom bill to make sure that churches are not closed during a pandemic. So I think that your viewers are going to be really happy with the list of things that are identified there: taxpayer-funded lobbying, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, girls' sports, just a lot of things that I think your viewers will be really glad to see are being prioritized by your legislature and members in the Senate. So I'll get that over to you, that
Please.
List of 31 top items.
That'll be awesome. And, I hope, and I don't want you to respond because I know this is controversial, but I'm hoping that students that are going from male to female are not going to be allowed to participate in female sports. I mean, you're not a female. And it's like, it makes my heart sick. It makes my stomach sick to think that my daughter would have had to have competed against a male who's changed genders, but did not change body types, did not change hormones, did not change any chromosomes, anything else. And so, again, if you want to respond, that's fine, but by no means am I wanting to put you in a corner on this. It's just how I feel. And I heard you mention that. And so
I agree with you, John. And, I'm the mother of 3 daughters. I was an athlete in junior high and high school myself. And so, to me, this this is a perfect example of something that's done in the name of inclusivity, right? It's done in the name of inclusivity, but its impact will be to exclude.
Exactly.
So there's something disingenuous about it to start with. So of course I'm fully in support of protecting girls' sports. And anyway, I appreciate you taking a position like that and giving me opportunity to speak about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I said, I didn't want to put you in a corner, but it's just, when you said it, it just hit a nerve, and I'm tired of hearing about it. You know, you want to create a third category of students who are transgendered competing against each other. Man, knock yourself out. I don't care at that point. But don't throw them into a female athletic category. I mean, there is no fairness in that. And I don't, you know, again, it's like you said, you're excluding, you're not including at that point. So anyway, I got to get off my bandwagon. I know that you've got to get to work and do the people's work. So,
well, I hope you're, everybody's staying warm now. Hopefully, I know we do still have Texans without power, and our hearts go out to them, and we're working hard to make sure that they have what they need. So many people are dealing with the aftermath of broken pipes, of damage to their homes, damage to their businesses. And I want folks to know we're going to be there for you, and we're there for you now. Of course, my office, we'll get my office number there for you guys so that people can reach out to us if they need to get some help. But I'm so proud of the churches, so proud of the community, so proud of everyone pulling together, and really neighbors helping neighbors.
Even our public schools opened up some of their school areas that they could, with no students being there, for warming centers. So,
it was amazing.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Absolutely. Well, Senator Paxton, thank you so much. And, you know, hopefully, again, we can get you next Wednesday, because I'd like to hear how the committee's going, what the movement is on that. I know that a lot of people want a lot of answers. And
well, I do encourage everyone again to tune in tomorrow at 9 online. You can watch live feed at senate.texas.gov for the business and committee hearing on ERCOT.
Yeah, and I put that in the feed, where to go to and everything. So, and again, if you'll have a staff member go back and look at that and answer some of the questions. And we had a lot of questions in regards to energy. And I know we'd be here till 11 o'clock answering them. So
we'll do that. And then I'll also post on my social media, Angela Paxton TX will be, we've got a video we're posting about the Every Mother Matters Act
Awesome.
that I hope people will go and look at and share. And then also I'll post the governor's 31 top items.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so much. Be safe down there.
Thank you. You too.
All
you
right.
too, John.
Take care. All right. Angela Paxton, our senator here, taking care of us. So tune in to the committee tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. That's going to be the Senate Business and Commerce Committee. So, all right. Thank you, Senator Paxton. You have a blessed day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. So we're going to have a special guest coming on here in just a moment. That's right. It is going to be our very own Charles Gura. We're going to be kicking around the idea of Tiger Woods and what on earth has gone on. So I'm telling him to call in now to the Zoom, and we'll Zoom him in. But a lot going on with Tiger Woods. First of all, a car rolls about 30 yards coming down a fairly steep mountain. I don't know if you've ever driven, pardon me, if you've ever driven Southern California, Northern California. California seems to be like just a big old mountain basin, except for in Fresno. Of course, that is they call it the gateway to the Sierra Nevadas. It's a beautiful vision if you've not been to Fresno to look up and see the Sierra Nevadas. But a lot of the hills are very, very steep. It's easy to lose control of your car. So far, the updates on Tiger Woods. Of course, he's, just to give you an idea what happened yesterday, he was driving in a Genesis V80, if I'm not mistaken, and coming down a hill and somehow missed the turn, hit the median, and then rolled down, just missed a telephone pole, and rolled down 30 yards down the side of the hill. The car is absolutely just destroyed. In fact, Michelle says that she's been on that road he crashed. And so it can be very dangerous. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. So a lot of questions, right? First of all, was he under the influence? Well, no, he was not under the influence. And so we don't have to answer that question. But the question becomes, if he wasn't under the influence, was there somebody in the car? No, there was nobody in the car as well. The car rolled. So my question, and the investigation is ongoing, was he on his cell phone? Was he changing the channel? Was he drinking coffee and dropped his coffee in the floorboard? Because, it could be something as simple as that. It was a one-car crash. They reported that his ankle was just absolutely crushed. They're going to have to probably rebuild his ankle. He had 2 fractures, one of them being a compound fracture in his right leg. And keep in mind, he's recovering from back surgery. So they got him into surgery. They took him to a trauma hospital over at UCLA and went to work on him immediately. So it's going to be interesting to see what the investigation unfolds. I don't think there's any wrongdoing. I don't think that there's any mystery person that escaped. I just think he was driving down the hill. I'm wondering if he got distracted and missed the turn, and that's what happened. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. And Nathan brings up, and I didn't mention this, I should have, no skid marks or signs of braking. And again, this is what lends me to believe that, did his cell phone fall down and he reached down to pick his cell phone up, and when he did, that curve came and he hit the median and was thrown off. And like I said, rolled down a hill for 30 yards. Did he spill coffee, look down and miss the curve? My guess is they're probably going to find, although I don't know, because again, there's no skid marks. So are they going to determine if he was speeding or not? I don't know how they're going to be able to do that without skid marks or signs of braking. So, and I guess the other question is, and we've not heard anything like this, that he's ever been diabetic or anything along those lines, but did he have a medical condition that could have caused him to black out for a short period of time and not see the curve because he wasn't awake? Could he have fallen asleep at the wheel? So Chuck says he was in. I don't see him there. Let's see. Nope, I'm just showing one participant. Chuck, you got to call back in. Let's see. Oh, goodness. He's challenging my technology skills. So they're saying, Nathan, though, that it was 30 yards off of the road. That's what they're saying. And I don't know otherwise. Have you heard otherwise? This morning I looked again to see if anything had changed, and it appeared that nothing had changed. And so I don't know. I just know that it's 30 yards is what I was told. And so I am curious if, again, if it's going to reveal that he was on his cell phone or blacked out. I think that that's a real possibility, that he could have blacked out. So, all right, Chuck, there, I've resent it to you. So, again, looks like he's already popped in. Let's let Chuck in, shall we? Get his take. But again, I've read, and I don't see anything that's different from the 30 yards off of the road. No, that it's 30 yards is what I was told. So, hello. All right, there he is. Look at that. We've got Charles Gura with us. He's our tech guru. He's the one that tries to get gets the feed out to you, but tries to overcome our inability. I'm talking about Kathy and I to be technology savvy. Our very own Charles Gura. Yo, Charles.
Hey, how are you, John?
Why are you in the desert, man?
I'm not in the desert, man.
You look like you're in the desert.
I am on Mars.
Oh, you're kidding. Now that, hey, you ready for this? Mars. You ready for this? That doesn't surprise me. If I were to ask any of your brothers or sisters, I would say that doesn't surprise me.
Don't you see what's right behind me?
The rover.
It's Perseverance. Perseverance is behind me.
I see that.
That's actually, I think, would be a great word for the day, right?
Perseverance?
Perseverance.
You and your word of the day.
Well, perseverance is what we've had to go through this last year. Isn't it amazing? That was launched probably, what, 3 years ago?
Right. Absolutely.
And so, but yeah, so what I would do was see if we could get a JP, Kathy, and the crew hat on Mars.
Oh, well, here you go. Let me hand you mine.
Okay. Oh man.
So there you go. Hey, we've
That's
got
awesome.
we need to put a flag on there.
You have a drone. They've got a drone over here.
We just need to, get a JP, Kathy, and the crew flag on Mars. So next time we're on and you're back on Mars, let me know and I'll hand you the flag, and we'll put a flag on Mars next time.
Here, I'll give you your hat back.
Yeah, I need it back. It's pretty bad. Oh, thank you, Chuck.
Yep.
I'm just glad that we have the ability to do that here in Zoom, hand the hats back and forth. I love that.
Oh, I know.
So,
I mean, they've been working on that in Star Trek, right? Transporting. And we just,
transported hats.
Figured out.
So talk about transporting. Boy, Tiger Woods wishes he could be transported from wherever his destination
I saw a tweet.
was.
I saw a tweet this morning on his Twitter account, and they were talking, and even the doctor was talking about how his right lower body is where the most of the damage was done, and it sounded like his tibia and fibia were both had compound type fractures. It seemed like, and so plus and also into his ankle, and they had to actually put a bar in his, I think it was his fibia or tibia, and also some pins and screws into his ankle.
Now, was it his fibia or femur bone?
It said his fibia and tibia.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Where's Dr. Clothier when you need him, right?
Right. Well, maybe you play a doctor on JP, Kathy, and the crew.
I can't be a doctor. Anyhow.
I can't be a doctor.
I can't be a doctor. Can't be a doctor. I'm on Mars. I mean,
Right. I get you.
The Martian.
The Martian. You're out of control. Well, if you had to surmise, because we were talking about it before you came on,
homeowners,
the idea that
for you. If you owe less than $331,000,
there was no alcohol involved, no drugs involved, nobody else was in the car. I'm surmising, could it have been him reaching for his cell phone that may have fallen down? Did he black out? Could he have blacked out?
I saw more. Read more about it, and they were saying that particular part of the road is a downhill grade, and it is on a curve. And there have been that spot is a location where they have frequent accidents. And even after his accident, there was another accident there that happened after his, and non-injury related to accidents. So, but still, driving if you're driving at a high rate of speed, which is what they indicated, you're going to have problems going on a turn. And the car was and I'm not bashing the maker by any means, but it was the Hyundai SUV
Genesis, right? And
I know those tend to be a lighter vehicle, and they're not as heavy. So if you're traveling at a rate of speed and lose control of something like that, it's very difficult to regain control of a very lightweight vehicle like that.
It's interesting because Michelle has driven that stretch of road. I'm trying to remember if I've ever driven that stretch of road. I know I've driven similar stretches of road because the original In-N-Out Burger is up in a hill like that, and it has a downhill grade. And so, I'm trying to remember if I've driven it, but the hills of California, whether southern or northern, they can be treacherous if you're not paying attention or if you're going too fast. What's going to be interesting is determining his speed without any skid marks or any signs of braking, because a skid mark can tell you, based on the distance that the car travels and skids, how fast that car was going, or gives you an idea. There's a mathematical equation for that. But when there's nothing, how do you really determine if he was speeding or not?
Well, I believe some of that is done by the fact that they know where he left the road, just by some of the damage, because it looked like there was a sign that he had run through. You can also, based on typically when you're, once you've lost control, you no longer have traction of the vehicle, just like when you're skidding in ice. And even though the accelerator may be speeding, it doesn't indicate how far, but then how far you've actually traveled, they could determine based on a calculation, like you're saying, calculation. Plus, I think some of the newer vehicles, especially if it was, probably a 2020 or a 2020 or a 2021 rental vehicle,
right?
Then it may have that information in its computer. And I know a lot of times because it'll say, what was the rate of speed at the time of the accident. It's kind of like a black box for a car now that they have.
Yeah, insurance companies are using them. It's interesting to offer their drivers cheaper rates by allowing them to monitor their speed and their driving skill. And based on that, then they'll decrease their premiums for being a good driver, right? And because I've driven with a friend of mine, and he would, like for example, it can tell when a call is coming in or you're on your cell phone and you answer your cell phone, right? So that would make you a distracted driver, and they'll ding you for it. So it's interesting, the freedoms we give up to save a few bucks. I'm not ready to roll that way yet. So
no, I haven't either, and for that very reason, it's like I want to. I'm not a very interesting person to begin with, but I certain things, it's like, okay, they don't need to know that. They don't need to know that.
Yeah, they don't. Nathan said it's the tibia, the fibula, and the ankle. And and I can confirm that. I looked on Fox News, and they had it there leading the conversation as well. Talking about freedom, let's throw this out there at you. We've only got a few more minutes to go, but this morning I read that H.R. 1, which is out of the House, is a bill that's trying to reform the election process. And what it does, and it's funny, Nancy Pelosi's quote is, well, I haven't read it. Let's just pass it and then we'll figure it out. Yeah, that's real good. Thank you, Ms. Speaker of the House.
Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so, but what H.R. 1 does is it takes away voter ID laws for the states. It allows for 16-year-olds to go vote. And then it opens up this mail-in ballot opportunity that just is so reaped with fraud and, oh my gosh, unbelievable the stories that I've heard over the election on dead people mailing in ballots that have been dead for 10 years, people that voted, and then a mail-in ballot came in their name, and they didn't fill it out. And so...
And I think what's amazing too is people don't tend to focus on this, but if they do that, do a mail-in, it's a federal crime because you're using the postal system for nefarious deeds. And so, those could be federally prosecuted.
And then the big part of that bill that I consider is that the federal government would draw the congressional district lines. Whereas the states, every 10 years, they have to redraw those lines. Then it has to go through the Justice Department to make sure that it is legal, right? That it does represent the population. And so could you imagine Democrats in charge of the House, Democrats in charge of the Senate, Democrats in charge of the presidency redrawing congressional district lines?
They're now moving everything towards that dictatorship, which having the states govern is what it should be. Whereas now you're going back to you really look back at what the USSR was. Yeah. Right. Their states could not mandate what their countries were doing. It was all done at that federal level, and it was a shambles.
Well, I'll tell you, I am not in favor of centralizing our election process,
not at all,
or the government. We know that doesn't work. That model is absolutely only authorizing authoritarian tyranny is what it's authorizing. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that people will get up, contact every representative Democrat and Republican, and say this is the most un-American bill that could exist out there.
And don't just talk about what you don't like, but go out and vote, because really it's your vote that is going to count most. And so I think that's one thing. Let me do something real quick before you go, John.
All right.
Let me come back and get back into my office. Just a second. I'll be right back.
All right. Sure. We're going to let you get.
If I can do this.
You're hilarious. You say you're an uninteresting person. I think you're pretty interesting.
Oh, there we go. Boy, that was a quick trip, man.
Boy, you are so funny. I'm just glad you had enough oxygen on Mars to be able to talk to us, Charles.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was pretty winded.
Pretty winded. You're out of control. I mean to tell you, I think that we need to hear some music carry us out for the day. With that being said, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Hey, Charles, thanks for joining us this morning and
Thanks
kicking around Tiger Woods a little bit, and also the idea that we're not ready to relinquish freedom just yet. That is for sure. All right, everybody have a blessed day. Again, put your hands together, please, and pray for Kathy and her family as they go through such a tragic event. And so, Kathy, we're thinking about you, and we love you, and we hope that your family is able to find some serenity in this terrible time. So, all right, we're JP, Kathy, and the crew. Don't forget, tune in to all of our other shows on the network. You can go to jpcrew.com and catch all of our shows there, or you can go on our social media. Chuck, tell them about YouTube, our new YouTube page.
Oh, JPK Broadcasting Network.
Not the, but JPK Broadcasting
JPK
Network.
Broadcasting Network.
Get over there and subscribe for us. Everybody have a blessed day.